Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I get to do something today that I haven't done in a long time here at T.H.O. I get to welcome some new people, starting with Hannah Dawson. Hannah, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Since we're talking about superhero movies today, in your opinion, who is the absolute most useless Avenger?
Useless Avenger? It's gotta be like either Hawkeye or what's Anthony Mackie's character called?
Oh, Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're both like,
AKA Wingman.
yeah,
In the literal and physical
they
sense.
like don't do much. I don't know, and there's like nothing super about them.
It reminds me of like I saw a fake trailer a long time ago for the first Avengers, and there's a great bit where like Black Widow says, "This is nothing we've ever trained for," and Hawkeye says, "No shit, all I got is a bow and arrow." And it's like, yeah, you know, I mean, come on, like this guy really, but also here today we have Geoff Wallace. Geoff, is there an Avenger more useless than Hawkeye and Falcon?
Well, neither Hawkeye nor Falcon have, billions of dollars.
Fair point.
And they don't have great... I guess Falcon has some good tech, but they don't have any mutations or anything like that. Yeah, probably most useless.
And then there's, the ones that do have mutations like Scarlet Witch, they can't call them mutation because they didn't have the rights to the X-Men.
But now they do.
Yeah. Now it's just one big happy corporate family.
Yep.
Well, we are today here to talk about Avengers Endgame, but we're also going to be getting more into sort of the broader superhero phenomenon and why this is a genre that has stuck in a big way, much more than maybe other genres like the fantasy genre have. But and we've got a full review of Avengers Endgame that's will be up by the time this podcast is online. But I want to hear from both of you. What did you think of the movie overall? Awkward silence.
I don't know who wants to go first.
I think if you take it with the first film, it's kind of contemporary
with the first Avengers or with
the
Infinity War.
Yeah. It's kind of the contemporary equivalent of Lord of the Rings, that trilogy.
Sure. I get that.
It's as epic in scope and, I don't know, fantastic in its own ways. I guess I should answer the question. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Right on. You sound a little bit like, not to read into what you're saying, you sound a little bit like you have reservations percolating, though.
Maybe. It might just be reservations about the genre itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hannah? Okay, so but going into this movie, I did have to watch a recap because I had no knowledge of Foundation. But going in it, I was actually underwhelmed because with everything Marvel's been saying of how they have a 10-year plan and blah blah blah, going into that I had to concede that not everyone was gonna die. There was there's no.
Right.
I feel like if you're gonna watch this whole epic finale, they've been beating into the ground the entire press run that they're it's gonna be epic. I'm there's no clear urgency or for me to emotionally connect with the characters if I know half of you are coming back and gonna get a fat check for your next movie in 5 months. Yeah. So when I watched it, I was 2 deaths, that's it. Everyone else lives. I'm well, that wasn't as epic as I thought, and half the movie was exposition. Yeah. And as much as I hate watching CGI punch fest for 2 hours, I was okay, well, this exposition is also getting really boring. Go back in time, grab the stones, and you're good. This didn't need to go on for an extra hour and a half. And it did. So I don't know. I kind of just found it underwhelming. But I applaud. I don't remember who wrote it, but
Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely.
I applaud them for being able to take all that source material. It is a lot of stuff that they've made before. 21 movies they made before this. I applaud them for being able to take all that and condense it into this. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it wasn't as epic as everyone purportedly said it would be.
Yeah, you know, I get a lot of what both of you are saying.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, like, to be honest, like I have a lot of misgivings about like the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. I love comic books. I grew up reading comic books.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the idea of an interconnected universe works as well on film as it does in the comics, because I feel like it's it closes off as many narrative avenues as it opens, and I think it puts a lot of restrictions on directors, and I think you can feel like how, you know, filmmakers like Ryan Coogler, you know, have been able to do great things within this universe, but maybe not as good as they could have been. And then beyond that, I really just like despised Infinity War, and kind of like for the reason you're talking about, Hannah, which is that like I was, to be honest, kind of laughing at the whole idea of the snap. Like I was like come on, like, you know, like there's like I can't like feel like sad when I know this is all going to be undone with literally another snap, which it is in this movie. I gotta say though, I mean, even though a lot of like the concerns I have about Infinity War and the MCU as a whole like apply to Endgame, I did like it a lot more than I was expecting. Like it did the emotion of it, even though I like kind of like resisted it a lot of the time, like it did get to me, and like, you know, as much as I kind of like yes since you can't see us, I'll tell you, Geoff was just literally pulling my heartstrings. but you know, I mean, you know, as much as I kind of like smirk at the whole idea of the snap and see it as sort of a manipulative trick, like I admit that it was, you know, poignant to see a world where half these people are gone, and then to see characters like Black Panther, who we have this relationship with, return. Yeah. But then, I mean, also like their concerns, like, I mean, like I guess like I always feel that like every movie, even like the most silly comedy, kind of has to deal with death in some way. You really think about any movie, that pretty much always applies. And I did think, like, at the end of the day, it's kind of odd how this movie deals with death. Like, it's sort of like, we can kill Robert Downey Jr. because his contract is up.
Sure.
Yeah. but you know, but we... by the way, I didn't say spoiler alert. Ha! So if you listened expecting us to, you know, dance around that stuff, I guess you're a sucker.
Iron Man died.
Iron Man died.
He's gone.
He's gone. Not coming back.
He's expendable.
But then, like, you know, well, it's like, well, when we want... But then, like, you know, well, we can kind of, like, let Captain America have his happy ending with Peggy Carter by just, like, doing a little... You know, as Doctor Who might say, you know, timey-wimey. Like, so I thought that was odd. Yeah, but that was mine. So I guess I kind of had a good to mixed reaction, which is a lot better, honestly, than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So.
On the emotional spectrum, I thought it was cute, like Thor's character when he's banned to like New Asgard and he has like that weird prosthetic like beer belly. I'm like, Chris Hemsworth still has that 6-pack. I'm like, that's not real. But
flip that thing up.
Yeah, like. But I thought the moment with his mom was sweet when he was with Rocket, and she's like, "It'll be okay. Like you can," and he like wields the hammer again.
Right.
I'm still worthy.
Yeah. Oh, it was cute though. She's like, "Eat a salad once in a while, sweetie."
I confess that was the scene where I went to the bathroom.
It's probably a good choice.
Yeah.
I guess it's not crucial.
No, but it was cute.
You maybe missed Natalie Portman's face the 1 second.
Right, yeah.
I honestly forgot she was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, I assume they shot some new stuff with her because there's, unless that was just archive footage.
I think in the credits,
because they credited
IMDb, it said it was just archive footage.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because I know she didn't want to come back. I heard she hated doing these movies.
That's probably fair.
But let's get into the bigger question. Yeah. The superhero stuff. I mean, what we're really trying to do today is get to the heart of the genre. Ask, why is it not just a genre but a phenomenon? Like, you know, I mean, it isn't, you know, I mean, look, you know, a lot of the reason why it's successful is, let's be honest, good marketing. Yeah. You know, Marvel,
massive marketing
Disney,
budget.
Yes, great marketing. You know, even Warner Brothers marketed Aquaman. really well. You know, that's a big part of why that movie was a hit. It had really, really damn good trailers. But something more is at work. You know, something about the superhero myth has taken in a whole, like perhaps even more than previously in history. Even though the comics have been around for decades, because as I'm sure both of you saw, the Endgame became the second highest grossing movie worldwide this weekend,
second
behind Avatar. Yeah, we'll see if it can beat Avatar. I don't know. I have my doubts, but we'll see. So I mean, we're really trying to get to the heart of that, but I think the best way is to start at the beginning. So I'm just curious to know from each of you, like, what was your first exposure to like the idea of a superhero? And I mean, you can talk about a movie. Yeah. If you want, but I mean, I think a lot of us, experience these, characters not just through the comics, but through even like products, through toys or like tie-ins or video games.
Yeah. I don't know. When I was like little, going like with my mom to the store, I mean, they always market things for kids, but it's like even like 15 years ago, it's like way more gendered though. So like all the super stuff was in the boy aisle, and then like when you would go to preschool, like all the boys would go play superheroes and like, I'm Superman, I'm Batman. All the girls would play princesses, but like I would hear that in my head and like go to the store and see like Batman fruit snacks and things on the aisle. But that was like my first exposure, and then
the Batman fruit snacks.
Yeah, they had Batman fruit snacks.
That seems like kind of like a perverse thing. It's like fruit snacks are such like happy colors, and like tie them into this dude. He's avenging his dead parents.
They might have been dark colors actually.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Dark Knight, dark
maybe.
fruit snacks.
The gender binary was too strong though back then. I chose the pink fruit snacks with like the Barbie stuff on them. But then like growing up, like when my parents would flip channels, I saw the Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, like only like 5 minutes of it, but that's what I remember, my first memories. But I never took too much interest in them.
By the way, my favorite superhero movie ever is the second one with Tobey Maguire.
Interesting. Is that the one with the Jesus Christ?
Yeah, the train. Okay. The Jesus train. And Doc Ock.
I couldn't remember if that was the first movie or the second one. Yeah.
I love the first one too. Yeah. Jeff, what about you?
I think it's also Batman.
Okay.
And probably the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeve.
Nice.
But you were talking about Aquaman being marketed so well. I'm sure as a kid I was caught up in the Tim Burton Batman marketing machine.
Sure.
Just so
Which
many
was
toys.
is legendary to this day.
Yeah.
Was the Tim Burton ones with George Clinton? Or was it Michael Keaton?
Keaton.
Yeah, okay.
The first two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batman Returns.
And then the animated series I think came out not too long after that. So Batman. Yeah.
It was Batman for me as well, actually, but a different Batman.
Okay.
I think the first time I ever really thought about superheroes was when I watched the Batman movie with Adam West.
All right.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that?
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's so good.
Dehydrates all the world leaders.
Yes. Yeah.
What?
Is it Joker who does it? Is it Joker and Penguin?
It's Joker, Penguin, Catwoman.
Okay, they're all together.
As Batman says, like when they team up, their minimum objective could be to take over the entire world.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like as a kid, like I thought that movie was, I mean, I knew it was, deliberately kitschy. Yeah. I got it, but at the same time, I thought it was genuinely cool as a little kid. I mean, like, I was like, yeah, he's got a utility belt. That's awesome, I mean,
right.
And it's funny, like, because I remember reading that Christopher Nolan actually grew up watching the show, and he said, like, he didn't get that it was a comedy. As a kid, which is really funny considering where he went.
Right.
With Batman.
Super serious.
Yeah.
I do like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman when she like comes home. She's like, "Honey, I'm home." She's like, "Oh wait, I'm not married." That was the one scene I remember from that movie.
I just like Michelle Pfeiffer's anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is interesting. Like the idea that, the genre has been pumped up, like I think in the minds of people as this really serious thing. And I know that as I grew older, I certainly started to take it more seriously because, you know, like I was getting into superhero movies in the early to mid 2000s when you had, you know, Sam Raimi on Spider-Man, Christopher Nolan on Batman, and really, and even, you know, to an extent, Ang Lee on Hulk.
Oh yeah.
This idea of like sort of like the auteur superhero movie,
Right.
and that like, you know, these serious filmmakers were using the these like kind of classic myths to kind of express things that were personal to them, and then, you know, kind of like now like that seriousness persists in a different way where Endgame is kind of amped up to be like, this is a cinematic event you can't miss. Like if you don't see it, like you're being left out. You're not in the in crowd. But
FOMO.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yes, FOMO. Yes, absolutely. But it's funny. Like all of us kind of talked about like, you know, sort of like more casual, more kind of like down to earth ways that we like entered into it. You know, that's kind of interesting. Like, I mean, it seems like there's almost like a little bit of a disconnect of what, you know, the studios want the genre to be seen as, and like what maybe like we all experience the genre as growing up. I don't know. I mean,
I think they can take liberties though with
Sure.
their characters. I don't know. I can't remember who the casting director for Marvels. I think it's Sarah Finn or something like that.
yeah, it is.
But
yeah.
whoever, I feel like every time they cast, they want someone who's like not only like fits the character, but they want them to be as like marketable and as appealing as possible. So like they want them to be good looking, like humorous. They can like do dramatic things, but they can also be quippy because that's what Marvel likes.
So quippy.
Yes.
Well, isn't it, and preferably it's a, like, you know, like a blondish guy named Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they have to be likable. Like,
Yeah.
But
No Chris Pine though.
No.
DC has got him.
Yeah.
You can't take him
Well,
away.
I mean, you bring up the likability thing. I mean, is that a problem? Is that a problem that like these movies are work so hard to be likable and charming, and it's like you can't have like you know, I mean we brought up Tobey Maguire. Like I mean you look back at those movies, that was a freaky performance. That was weird. Like he was like this like strange like kind of like bug-eyed guy with like
Right.
a weird voice, just like creepily taking pictures of Mary Jane. You know, I mean has the genre gotten too likable? Is there such a thing?
I don't know. Maybe because like going into they know they want to appeal to a wider fan base than just like the diehard comic fans. Like
Sure.
maybe anyone. I don't know. I have a few friends who are really big Marvel fans, but they've never read the comics. Like they've
interesting.
just grown up on the movies and they like the actors. Like they like how they've embodied the characters and that's how they see them.
Sure.
So.
Are either of you have either of you read the comics? I mean,
Nope.
I did read some of the comics when I was a kid, but I
Okay.
really haven't since then. I do know enough to know that the whole Infinity Gauntlet storyline is not really what we get in the movies.
Okay. What was it? How did it play in the comics? Because I never read them.
I had a friend summarize it for me as Thanos is bored and he wants to conjure the personification of death so he can sleep with her.
What?
Yeah, and then I think he succeeds, maybe. And then at that point, he gets bored again, so he decides that he's going to take apart the universe atom by atom. I think it's like the line that he says at the end of Endgame.
Okay.
Where I think he says he's just going to destroy everything and rebuild
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't remember how he stopped either.
Is it weird that like I think that sounds like kind of a better movie?
It
sounds bonkers.
It wouldn't be PG-13 anymore.
No,
It would be
no.
rated R.
Well, then Disney wouldn't do it.
No, Disney doesn't do rated R.
I'd imagine that there'd be a lot more artistic, auteurist avenues in that
Sure.
version of the film. I don't know if you ever saw there was a bizarre G.I. Joe, not G.I. Joe movie. Where
Yes.
It was called like G.I. Joe Kanzo Empyrean or something.
Oh, no,
And it was like art house G.I. Joe, and the director only showed the movie in like 3 theaters around the world, and in odd places too, like Nigeria maybe.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, you should watch the trailer later because it's super weird. Like someone running around in a Destro mask, but also wearing like a floral print suit and talking about having a cure to the AIDS virus. So yeah, there are, I guess, tourist approaches to superheroes, but
sure,
I don't think you can even watch that movie. I think it's been destroyed.
Yeah.
Tangent, but
no,
yeah,
it's a good tangent.
It looks very low budget was what I was going for.
Sure.
So I don't know if it would be as persuasive to audiences without all of the CGI magic.
Wasn't there like a weird Japanese Spider-Man show?
Ooh.
It was like in Japan.
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
really weird.
So this is the one where he his catchphrase was when people would say like, "Who are you?" and he'd say, "An emissary from hell, Spider-Man."
Yeah.
It's like,
wow.
It's like that's a superhero catchphrase.
I've seen clips from that. I'm like, I didn't know Spider-Man lore went that weird.
That sideways.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they had a Japanese spider girl who had like her own like spider robot. So that was, I mean that was not quite as weird as the TV show, but it was
probably not.
It was appropriately weird. I thought it was in the same shirt. So I want to move on to the question of like kind of like why the genre has stuck. But I want to give it a twist. I want to read this passage from an article from mynorthwest.com by Dyer Oxley, and it's about Ben Fodor, aka Phoenix Jones. For our listeners who don't know, he was an actual real life superhero. He put on a costume. He patrolled the streets of Seattle and did in fact try to stop criminals.
How have I not heard this?
So this is about him. So he started out in 2009 climbing buildings and peering onto the streets below, hunting for crime like a frame from a Batman comic. He wore a Boys to Men tuxedo, as he describes it, that he could tear away, revealing his costume underneath when he needed it. But then someone actually got mugged, and it took me like 5 minutes to crawl down the fire escape and get down there, Fodor said. The girl was like, "What are you doing? He already left. You look like Count Chocula. You look stupid." But he pursued the mugger anyway, up and down a building and around the street. He got away. I'm like, "Man, I am so bad at fighting crime," Fodor said. At this point, I've taken fighting crime for like 3 weeks, and I'm not fighting anything. I'm just running around in a freaking Boys to Men tuxedo looking stupid. To me, that was the scariest part, because no one thinks of me as a superhero. No one is taking me seriously. This is what mentally crazy people do. So, I thought this was interesting, because this shows, like, kind of the gulf between, like, what sort of, like, superheroism is kind of like a metaphorical idea, and superheroism is a literal idea. So, like, we can, like, open a comic book or watch a movie, and yeah, like, you know, we might, like, kind of laugh at the ridiculousness of fighting evil in a unitard, but we can kind of, like, accept it as a sort of heightened reality.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you watch Wonder Woman walking across a World War I battlefield, and it's like, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, it's Wonder Woman. Duh, of course she's, like, has a bulletproof, you know, leotard or whatever. You know, but then it's like when you take the idea of superheroism into the real world, it's really just, like, kind of, like, totally illogical vigilantism,
right?
Which is not something that hardly anyone would like or approve of. Some people would approve of it, but, you know, I mean, like, I don't think many. So, and yet, so I guess, and I know this is kind of a question with sort of convoluted question, but I wonder what the two of you think about, like, not only like why the idea of the superhero has really taken hold, but also, like, what are people responding to if they're not responding to the literal idea of fighting crime? Because the literal idea is clearly, you know, kind of absurd and not, I think, what attracts people.
Well, like, I can think of 2 movies that sort of tap into real world issues. One is Captain America: Civil War.
Okay, sure.
And it tap into it. I guess it maybe just like scratches it, but it's a little more political maybe than some of the other.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's all about
Avengers movies.
Kind of like is about sort of, you know, government oversight versus this kind of like mentality of like, you know,
self-governing.
Yes.
Is that the one where they're like forced to become part of the UN thingy or like government agency?
Yeah. It's like they have to register.
Robert Redford wants them to sign.
or William Hurt, right?
Oh, it's William Hurt. Yeah. Sorry, a different Oscar winner.
Yeah.
So
I like Robert Redford in The Winter Soldier.
That's right. That's the one he's in.
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh, like what you were starting to talk about, the differences in governing, and also, I'm guessing the movie was filmed and written in 2015 or so, 2016.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Trump, authoritarianism. But those are like pretty light themes, I think, that are present in the movie. A movie that I think digs into the zeitgeist more would be The Dark Knight and the Occupy Wall Street movement, and the Joker being this rising force of chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I brought those 2 movies up because those seem to tap into like relatable, deeper, real world issues. And maybe by doing that every once in a while in a superhero movie, they become more relatable. And then you can get some, I don't know, like fantasy, more heavily fantasy claptrap, like Age of Ultron or something.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's really interesting because, you know, I mean, both the things you brought up. I mean, this idea of like, you know, the conflict in Captain America: Civil War, which is between, you know, Captain America who wants to be free to basically be a vigilante, and then, you know, Iron Man, who is, you know, saying like, we want, you know, government oversight. You know, there has to be rules, there has to be limits, you know, and that's I mean that's very much a real world conflict, and I mean I think that's a lot of like kind of the issues that, you know, what happened with the Malheur Wildlife Refuge brought up.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, with the Dark Knight trilogy, I mean, absolutely, Occupy Wall Street was referenced. You know, the climax of The Dark Knight Rises was even shot on Wall Street.
That's true. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I do you think then that like it's kind of like an issue of good timing that these movies sort of tapped into, you know, anxieties and debates that people were already having, and that's part of why people are engaging in the story, because it's not just some fantasy universe, it's things that they're actually, you know, feeling and, you know, worrying about or just ruminating on.
I don't know, I had like the opposite effect of like, you know, when you just kind of like feel shitty, so you watch a movie as in like a form of escapism.
Yeah, you
watch.
And because I feel like with superhero movies, like, you know, a lot of these people are like immortal, indestructible. There's like a sense of security that they're always going to win in the end.
Yeah,
so, like, you kind of have that
infallible.
Like, yeah, it's like a security thing. Like, this person is like always going to fight for justice. They're always going to be on like the side of good, and people, I don't know, just get wrapped up in that. Like, seeing, you know, like when kids get so wrapped up in that they like fly off the couch because they, in their mind, they truly can.
Yeah.
I feel like even adult men are like that. Like adult Marvel people gotten so wrapped up in that. Like, even the quote you said, I feel like he had a lot of hubris of like, I can do anything. Then
he totally did. Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know, there's like a weird projection that you like from that onto your life. Like, I'm like that person. But then you have to talk to yourself and you're like, wait, I can't fly. Or like, wait, I don't have superhero strength.
It's funny, you know, I flashed on Won't You Be My Neighbor, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because Fred Rogers in that, he talks about like like, you know, like, I'm worried about, like, these kids who, like, think they actually can fly like Superman and they're gonna die, and, you know, it's like, well, you know, I mean that is actually a concern, you know, I mean.
As a preschool teacher, there's there's more little girls now which is great that they think they're like Wonder Woman and stuff, but they truly can, like, they'll jump off of anything or like pretend to shoot things, even though I'm like, we don't have weapons at school, but they truly do think they're Superman or Batman or any other superhero. And they're 3, so I'm like, you are, but
we're gonna have a whole new generation of people who, because of Captain Marvel, like trying to like shoot like pulverizing beams of light out of their hands. You know?
That also reminds me of a story my mom used to tell about my great grandma trying to take away toy guns from my uncles, and then they would just use sticks. Yeah, it's like maybe the movies just elevate imagination, but kids are probably still gonna try to do crazy things regardless.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, but you know, it's interesting, like, kind of the idea of like these movies as escapism.
Like people at Comic-Con go all out.
Oh yes.
They are grown adults. Like
That's another level. Yeah. It's another tier of escapism.
Well, I mean, this I think is a whole another part of the whole thing, and like, you know, I mean, look, you know, like I'm a fanboy, you know, I geek out about, you know, some of this stuff, but at the same time, like, I don't know, do either of you watch Red Letter Media?
I think we talked about this last time we chatted. They do long movie reviews.
Yes,
I still haven't checked it out.
Look, you know, like I'm not giving them a blanket recommendation. Some of the stuff they do, I think, is pretty off-putting, but some of the stuff they do is absolutely right on target. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I think they did that was interesting, they put together like kind of like some footage of like Star Wars fans cheering. I think it was a Star Wars celebration, and they likened it to like almost like a political rally, and like the idea of like kind of like everybody, you know, sort of like almost like blindly cheering, you know, for a brand, basically. And I mean it does seem like, I mean, just some of the stuff that you were telling me, Hannah, about, you know, like the way, you know, people reacting in the theater, and people like, you know, timing the bathroom breaks just right, that like you know, like it's the end of the world if they miss like more than 2 seconds. And, you know, look, I get, you know, I get the passion, because like I feel that way about, you know, a lot of things. You know, like I'm the guy who, you know, paid to see Interstellar early on film, you know, like super late at night. So, but I don't know, is mob mentality coming into play? Like, it just like is a little bit of an avalanche, and like it gathers speed, and, you know,
mob escapism.
That's an interesting way to describe
mob escapist bandwagon.
Mob escapist.
Just mash all those words
together. Yeah.
I do think Hanno's on the right path, in that it's mostly fueled by escapism, but coalescing into a mob.
I don't know. I feel like when you use the word mob, you like associate with like anger and frustration against a thing, but I don't know if it's frustration more than like excitement overall for these movies. Although I just was reading something, it's kind of comic book related, but the Sonic fans like made them change. They were so mad at how it looked. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe if they have like a more powerful influence than I thought they did before, because they're the ones that's like paying and patroning these things. But I was surprised that like they had that much power, that the studio was like, okay, fine, we'll change Sonic's face.
What studio is behind the Sonic movie?
Is it Paramount?
Oh,
maybe.
Paramount.
I think it might be Paramount.
I can't remember.
I guess if they expect it to be a big enough hit, then they'll throw more money at it to fix it. But
I was surprised.
So to me, the Sonic thing is funny, because, and it's funny to me that anyone would complain about it, because does anyone really expect Sonic the Hedgehog to be a good movie?
No.
Right.
Like, is it really like worth fighting for? I mean,
Has there ever been a good video game movie?
no.
I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
there's never been one that like had like broad appeal.
Right.
I mean, like I reviewed Assassin's Creed for Willamette Week, and I thought I enjoyed that movie, but purely on like a kitsch level where it's like, God, this is just so stupid. It's kind of awesome.
Was that the one with Michael Fassbender?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see it.
No, I didn't see it either.
And Marion Cotillard.
Oh.
She's in that.
She was, yeah. And Jeremy Irons and Charlotte Rampling.
They wasted that
I
talent.
think it was like the classiest like piece of crap like
You've ever seen.
Yeah.
Did he swan dive into any hay bales from tall heights?
He
Or
I don't know if he hit any
piles?
hay bales, but he was swan diving. I think he like swan dived like off a tower
Okay.
or something. Yeah. No, but that was funny. Yeah. So I mean, you know, all this stuff is interesting, and I kind of think all the stuff we've brought up is, you know, plays into it. Like I think there is like a real world element these movies are touching on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like definitely certain anxieties and whatnot. I think there's an escapism element. Like, I mean, you think about like you know, Superman Returns. Like the villain's plan is to grow a continent in the ocean, and what does Superman do? He lifts the continent and like pushes out into space. You know, if only all our problems were that easily solvable.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the escapism is a very real thing.
Which Superman is that? Who portrays him in that?
Oh,
movie?
it was the Brandon Routh one,
Brandon Routh
the
one.
Brian Singer.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Mid 2000s.
Yeah,
So you can
2006.
Go die in a hole. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's
God, yeah.
But
that's
aren't
good.
both Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, aren't they both like renounced their
They're Batman or
their capes?
Yeah.
yeah. I think they have.
So Ben Affleck definitely has renounced his cape.
He's
And good riddance, because God, he was so bad.
well, he's divorced and sad now.
Oh yeah, sad that like Henry Cavill, like they're like, you know, the Hollywood Reporter broke the story saying he's out,
Yeah.
and then like, you know, one of those is like, you know, no, he's not really out. We're happy to have, you know, Henry playing Superman.
that
It's like yeah, sure. You
The
know.
mustache killed him.
They should just let him have the mustache. It would look better than that CGI mouth.
That would be an interesting character change.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
It'd probably be a super strong mustache too.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't it have like Kryptonian fibers or something, or what? I don't know.
Did you ever see Superman 4: The Quest for Peace?
No, I haven't actually.
It's
Don't worry, fights Nuclear Man.
Yes, it's so terrible. Actually, maybe you would enjoy it because it's very kitschy and campy. Right down to a wordless, airless fist fight in slow motion on the moon. But at the start of the movie, Lex Luthor goes to, I want to say it's either a Superman museum or maybe it's the Louvre, but they have one of Superman's hairs in a display
I heard about
case,
this.
suspending like a ton weight, just to show how strong his hair is. So maybe his mustache would, you know, be flipping over tables and.
I believe that. There was you know, when Man of Steel, for the first part of the movie, he had a beard.
Right.
And I remember, I think it was some company, maybe it was like Gillette, they did a whole like campaign saying,
Wow.
"How does Superman shave?"
I would love to see it and learn like marketing and just the advertisers like, let's do this product, because isn't it Marvel always partners with Audi, right?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of Audis in all of the Avengers movies. So
Did they? Was that in Black Panther? Was it an Audi in the car chase and the?
There might be. I know.
I think so. Yeah.
For
That's what I
Homecoming, they did an Audi special where Spider-Man gets his license, and they're like,
Wow.
and it's like all this like
That's
assist
terrible.
drive technology, and he's like, look at me, no hands.
Oh.
And then he has to go rob a bank or something, but he gets his driver's license in the end, thanks to the Audi car.
Right. Glad that plot thread was resolved.
Yes, super necessary.
So I just have to go on a tangent for a second. My favorite bit of superhero product placement is in The Dark Knight Rises, the climax when they're trying to plug the nuclear reactor back in so it doesn't explode. During the chase, like a bunch of Batmobiles go driving past Saks Fifth Avenue, which I always love because like on the one hand it's like okay, like it fulfills their like product placement quota, but it's like at the same time it's like it's like a subliminal message that even if Bane is defeated, like the evil of capitalism will still reign. Like I wish more Superman movies would like do that, like kind of have their cake and eat it too with product placement.
Is there an actual product placement quota, or like do they just in order to just get more money?
I've wondered about that
because
too.
as like you're already established as Marvel, you're gonna make a shit ton of money. Like I don't know, or I guess brands would be like super excited though to work with you. I guess I don't know.
Well, I mean, I know part of it is like to pay for these gargantuan budgets. But I don't know if there's a specific quote. I mean, the last I heard, like I know Skyfall set like a record
for a marketing budget
for like product placement.
Okay.
Because they had a Heineken basically every scene.
Right, and he always wears Omega diving watches. Gets Dom Perignon.
Right.
Marketing is kind of built in too.
I know.
I find them in music videos though more than anything now when they're like taking drinks of things with their clothes. I don't know.
Well, let's move into the final question. A couple of years ago when I was at school in Eugene, I interviewed Sean Hansen, who's a film critic who was also working at the Broadway Metro Theater there. I went up to the projection booth to interview him. I was just kind of interviewing him about criticism, but at one point he gets to talking about superheroes, and he just says all of a sudden, Superman is a fascist. And I was like, I don't know that I agree with that or disagree with that, to be honest, but it gave me something to think about, and I think it plays into something, which is there's a lot of ways of saying this, but I think there's always this debate about, is the idea of the superhero good or bad for humanity? There was just an article in the New York Times this morning where a bunch of critics were kind of like talking over Endgame, and Manohla Dargis straight up compared Tony Stark to Donald Trump. And so I think at the same time, there are all these other arguments to be made by, when you look at a character like, Black Panther, who could be argued as, a very empowering, inspiring, figure to have in a movie like that. So, I guess I just want to pose the question to both of you, is the idea of a superhero something that's kind of poisoning movies? Is it bringing something worthwhile to movies? Is it doing both? Because there's that. I think that's a potential argument that could be made.
It does seem like vigilantism is excused given either sufficient money, righteousness, outcomes, or superpowers, which I think one of your questions was about why more of them aren't considered vigilantes. Superman is too powerful, Usually, I think a vigilante has an idea that you can stop them in some way. Sure, yeah. But how, you can't stop Superman that easily, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah. What was the DC movie where Batman and Superman fight at the end?
Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the convoluted title. In the source material for that, Superman is very clearly painted as a pro-USA nationalist fascist.
And you're talking about Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, right?
Yeah. And Batman is kind of a mob leader, like hyper democratic, the point where democracy turns into mob rule.
Sure.
Yeah.
But he still represents the will of the people. I didn't see that movie, so I don't know how it compares ultimately. But
you missed nothing. The main thing that strikes me about that movie is just how boring it is. But this is really interesting. first of all, like what you're describing that Frank Miller did with The Dark Knight Returns, pretty much no superhero movie would go that explicit.
No.
I mean, is there something dangerous about that like, it's, maybe some of these characters there is a fascist element, but that it's kind of insidious, or, it's
I could see that.
not addressed. Or,
Yeah. To use another property, Watchmen, you have a wide array of characters with wide levels of powers, and you get Rorschach, who operates outside the law, who's a vigilante to a T, and is pretty much totally human, no real superpowers.
Right.
And then you get Dr. Manhattan, who's the absolute embodiment of superpowers, and by the end of the storyline, they're both taken out of the picture.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just to negate the dangers that they pose as being too powerful and too insidious.
I don't know why this first came to mind, but I just remember The Incredibles. And
The Incredibles gets to a lot of these questions.
They made them go underground, but I feel like the superheroes then thought they had so much self-importance and an obligation to society, and the government's no, you're doing the opposite. You're making it worse. You're doing shitty things. You need to go underground. And I don't know. I felt I don't know why I just thought of that movie all of a sudden. But I was like, oh, they did that, and that's an interesting point.
But it's funny because, of course, Brad Bird made The Incredibles, and everyone always when you talk about a Brad Bird movies, everyone always brings up like Ayn Rand, and this kind of this idea that every Brad Bird movie has this kind of Ayn Randish
libertarian
super
person.
Exactly, this vibe of there are some special people. They're better than most of us. Right. Let them do their thing.
Yeah. And but for the superhero, I feel like they have this weird, not sense of duty, but they're people are relying on me. I have to do this, and then everyone else is no, you don't. And in the second one, the evil person, the sister, was superheroes are the reason my parents died. That's why I hate all of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the end, they kind of just, at the end of Incredibles 2, they just sort of reaffirm superheroes again.
Yeah.
And it's but they really are good, even if, they did cause, her parents' death.
Yeah, because her brother's the opposite. He's we need superheroes. They're amazing. And
Right.
He's every Marvel nerd ever.
I know that's been a storyline in the comics for a while, or a concept that they've juggled around. There's a What If brand, series. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And I remember reading one when I was a kid that was, what if Punisher kills the entire Marvel universe? And his entire motivation, I think, is that the Avengers were fighting in Central Park, and the Fantastic Four were fighting in Central Park, and the Thing threw a car and it killed the Punisher's family. And then he systematically kills everyone as an act of revenge. So that's at least a dark version of having too much power. And even though he doesn't really have any superpowers, he just outsmarts all of them. He kills Captain America by having them fight in a location that he's scouted out already, so he hides guns in certain places, and Cap doesn't think of that because it's underhanded and he only fights clean. Right? I don't feel like the movies have really addressed the issue of too much power that often.
Yeah.
I mean, Thanos,
that's true.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
but
this is a movie that most people hate. I'm gonna have to out myself as a defender of it. One of the only movies that dealt with this was Spider-Man 3. And
I've never seen that one.
I haven't seen that. All I know is the weird dancing
right.
scene.
Yeah, which I'm also a defender of. I love that scene. I think it's hilarious. But that was one of the I mean that was a movie that where you have a a superhero who's vengeful, totally corrupt, is almost a murderer. Is only saved from being a murderer because he his nemesis is able to basically come back to life. And on top of all that is guilty of domestic abuse, but
it's a little dark.
Yeah,
does
but
does he slap Kristen? What's her face?
Kirsten Dunst. Yeah. Like, hits her like right in the middle of a club, and which is like, and there is this idea of too much power. That doesn't really come up a lot. I think kind of, this idea of like Iron Man. Mm-hmm. And that basically Iron Man, he says it as a joke in the second film, I've successfully privatized world peace. Yeah. But he kind of privatizes war. It's like, well, I don't like weapons, so I'm going to create more powerful weapons that can destroy weapons, and trust me, I've got this whole like weapons thing under control, right, guys. You can, because I'm
and that's the ongoing guilt of the character, right? Like he
that's true.
He comes back to it more and more in the later
even in the first one, that's like what got him blown up was his ballistic missiles or something like that.
Right? Yeah.
But when you said Iron Man, I remember in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Keaton's character, because he's like the blue collar worker that has to like clean up everyone else's shit. Yeah. And he's like, what was the first one? He was contracted to do it, but then they're like, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gonna do it anyway. Yeah. And he has that whole spiel to Peter. He's like, you think Iron Man's the best, but like, we do all the work.
Right.
I mean, it was a rational argument. I agreed with it.
I agree with it too. Yeah.
Good argument, Michael Keaton.
And sorry, I'm going off on another tangent, but like one thing that has bugged me is the way like the idea of class has been treated in these movies. Like I think with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, there was a real like sense of like Peter Parker as this working class guy struggling to survive, and often his enemies were very wealthy men who
well funded.
Yes, yeah, and this idea that they had these advantages that he didn't, and he kind of had to make up for it with elbow grease. Whereas you have in Spider-Man: Homecoming, it's like you have Tony Stark, the 1%, turning Peter Parker against a fellow working class guy, basically, or at least that's my interpretation. And I feel so like not fun when I point out things like that. Like I feel like such like a snob. But it's like you gotta think about this stuff because this is serious stuff, and the movies don't want you to think about it. Yeah. They just want you to kind of sit back and again, escapism.
Well, they put you in the shoes of like a 15 happy-go-lucky Peter Parker. So he's like, I got a new suit. I'm just going to Germany. Blah, blah, blah. Like the Homecoming opens with his little like home video. He's like, this is the coolest thing ever, and like his voice pitches up like
right.
He doesn't think about that. He's like, I just want to find all the new features of the suit. Blah blah blah. I'm like, that's him throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, it's like a movie. It's like how he's playing with his toys.
Yeah.
I feel like that recurring character trait is also what makes Into the Spider-Verse so great. Not only do you get the more like blue collar Peter Parker, or not Peter Parker, Peter Parker Morales. Template, Miles Morales.
Although we get a couple Peter Parkers.
Yeah. Then you get the other Peter Parkers, and you get to see like sad kind of middle-aged. Is he middle-aged? Just overweight, down his luck Peter Parker. So you kind of break free from some of the more tropey Peter Parker things.
Well, and then all the spider people in that are so different.
Yeah.
They're all coming together to achieve a common goal. I think it had like a weight that these movies like don't often have. Like we're like until like Captain Marvel came along, the Avengers had, Black Widow as the token female character, and it's kind of her and, all these other guys who, kind of look the same, kind of are the same, you know, and it's like, and so, I don't know, they're I think there's more weight to the Spider-Verse conceit.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to, before we wrap up, I think one thing we haven't talked about is like I think what we're getting into is like what you see when you analyze these movies pretty literally, you know, and I think you have to do that to a certain extent. You absolutely have to kind of like understand them, but at the same time, I feel like, you know, it's in the same way that you know you can look at fairy tales literally, but you don't always look at them literally. You can also look at them symbolically as, you know, like oh, Hansel and Gretel isn't, you know, really about, you know, getting cooked in the oven. It's about like, you know, the end of innocence, you know. And I think you can look at superhero movies in a certain way. I mean, you know, like, you know, sure, we talked about, you know, class and Spider-Man, but then again, like Spider-Man is also a metaphor for adolescence.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we can talk about, you know, like Wonder Woman in kind of a literal sense is this almost superwoman who descends almost from heaven to like save humanity, or we can talk about it in terms of like, you know, like at its root, you know, Wonder Woman's story is a coming of age story about a character who has this very optimistic view of what humanity is capable of, and, you know, gets kind of like a harsh dose of reality and has to temper that view, which is, I mean, Batman and Black Panther go on that journey as well. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, like, even though like there's, I mean, we touched on, I think, some toxic stuff that's in the genre, but I think there is like they're all valuable things too, that are, you know, for lack of better terms, you know, good for people. You know?
Funny enough, when you said Disney, there have been like papers published about like that princess complex.
Yeah.
Like when I was 4, I honestly thought, I was like, oh, I'm like, Prince Charming's gonna come and I'm gonna wear a pretty princess dress. I'm gonna live in a castle and like be on that white horse. Like I thought that happened to every girl watching those movies growing up, and it's like, it's definitely a weird complex. But yeah, like I've always had friends and they had that same idea when they were little too. Like they were gonna be a princess.
Right.
But you said that and that's what it reminded me of.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because in a way, like, doesn't everybody have like a version of that? You know, like,
maybe.
I mean, like for me, I guess maybe it was like, you know, thinking I was going to be an astronaut. You know, and like it's like, yeah, like I'm going, like I was looking, like I'm going into space, man. And I was like, oh man, like I'm not good at math. Like I can't eat food through a straw. That would be just too gross. You know. It's like, doesn't everybody kind of go through that?
I distinctly remember the exact moment when I decided I did not want to be an astronaut. And it was in 5th grade when an astronaut came to my school and talked at an assembly, and he talked about training at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and you have to learn to use a special vacuum toilet. And they film you doing it, and I imagined that there was a camera inside the toilet, and I'm like, nope.
Hey, I get that. Yeah, like at that point, like,
yeah, it's too much.
I stopped believing it when I realized the only goal in marriage in life is not marriage. And I was like, never mind, that's not happening anymore.
But it's funny. I mean, like, because I mean, we're not, you know, talking about, you know. I mean, I don't think, it sounds like none of us wanted to, like, you know, grow up and be a superhero, but we all had our version of like sort of a kind of a larger than life fantasy.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't this all kind of come back to escapism?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, these movies we're talking about, they all play to, you know, an older audience. I mean, maybe in a sense, like, we never like grow out of that to a certain degree. Like, maybe it's always kind of like down there.
Right.
You know, like,
especially now that superhero movies are so entrenched in the culture, and you know, maybe 20 years ago or more, it could have been like, oh, those are just kids movies, but
yeah,
you have tons of adults going to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was just thinking, you know, maybe the question of a superhero becoming too powerful threatens the whole escapism thing, and you have to always keep it in check. Otherwise, like, you want to escape to something just to see a superhero dealing with their own like really big problems, right? You want them to be kind of manageable problems. I think
so. Yeah.
unless you get enough escapist movies in there, and then you've earned the like Logan or then you've earned the gritty, serious movie where you can kill two characters.
Yeah. It doesn't get more gritty or serious than Professor X when he's in Hugh Jackman coughing out blood. I mean,
Has he officially retired from that role?
Hugh Jackman?
He's done.
I think so, yeah.
By the way, I love him. He was a great Wolverine. I mean, he was like, I feel like, and this is a dorky thing to like obsess over, but I feel like he was nice to his fans.
I think you're right.
I give him a lot of credit for that, and for I mean, it was almost 20 years.
Oh my God.
As that character. Yeah, because the first X-Men movie was
2000. But he would have been shooting it in the late 90s.
Right.
Yeah. Damn. And then 2017 for Logan. That's a long time.
I'd guess that he probably saw how much the fans liked him and then was appreciative of that, and it's just kind of a feedback loop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then once he was done, he wanted to go do his passion projects and hit the British Short. I didn't even bother seeing it.
That movie's bonkers.
Is it?
I
watched the synopsis. It seemed pretty crazy.
It's crazy. Some of the songs are pretty good. I mean, but it's like, this is a movie that ends with him like in a red jacket with like elephants, it's like lions or elephants jumping through hoops of fire. I think it was lions.
It better be real lions.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered a lot of good ground. I don't think I have anything left unless either of you have any final superheroic thoughts.
If anyone's depressed about Endgame, the next Marvel movie's coming out in July, so you won't be too deprived for too long.
You can see Tom Holland go to Europe and hang around with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I do like Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal's great.
Yeah, I'll third that.
and two more Marvel movies coming out.
What are the other two?
Oh, they haven't announced them, but I'm guessing it's going to be Black Widow and Eternals. So.
Oh, and probably a Black Panther sequel.
That's what Black Panther or Guardians. James Gunn got back on.
Right, there has to be a third Guardians movie.
Okay, again.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. And I know this is a bit of a tangent, but like this whole James Gunn thing is so funny. Like, because it's like, okay, first like he's fired and it seems like his career is in the toilet. Then he gets hired for another superhero movie. Then he gets rehired for Guardians. So he actually gets more work than he would have had he not tweeted all of those despicable things.
Oh yeah.
It's like is the moral of this story that like if you tweet stuff like that it'll help your career? Because that somehow that just feels.
When did he tweet them again?
Was it 2010?
It was kind of back in time.
It was like
it was a while back. Yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other debate. But
right.
I just think it's funny how things worked out. That like he's. But yeah, that's another story. Well, thank you all for tuning in. If you like this podcast, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews. And please check out all the great reviews and content we have at thomoviereviews.wordpress.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, here with Hannah Dawson and Geoff Wallace. And for all of us here at T.H.O Movie Reviews, happy movie watching.